This is the Twilight Zone VR, a modern interpretation of the classic television series of the same name that has you playing through 3 separate mind-bending episodes. This releases March 18th, 2024 for the PSVR 2 headset for $20 US and is currently available on Quest headsets as well. It's part stealth, part shooter, full of mystery and intrigue, so let's see if that combination makes for an engaging game worthy of the Twilight Zone title. Hello fellow travelers, before we get to it, if you think we've earned it, a thumbs up and subscription really helps the channel out, and of course, please leave a comment with your thoughts on this title or anything you want to get off your chest. I'm Ryan for the VR Grid, now let's do this. I like mysteries, I like horror, I like suspense, and I like shooters, so on paper, the Twilight Zone VR should be a winner, though what's here feels like a mishmash of solid ideas marred by mundane and uninspired gameplay. Don't get me wrong, it's not awful, and each story does have its own merits, but when taken as a whole, it's, well, let's just dig into it, shall we? I'm going to quickly cover the visuals here, as they play a large factor in my enjoyment of the game, or lack thereof. This originally released on the Quest back in July of 2022, and it looks like it, with stripped back textures, static lighting effects, and stages that seem cobbled together using generic assets, minus some elements I'll touch on in each chapter. It's a little misleading that, in my opinion, the developers have promised enhanced graphics on the PSVR 2, as what's on display is anything but impressive, looking akin to lower budget efforts we got for headsets several years ago, and while I could excuse that lacking quality on lesser powered standalone headsets, on the PSVR 2, it's nothing short of disappointing. This is not a AAA game, nor is it trying to be, with each stage taking roughly an hour to get through, and it's priced somewhat accordingly considering the content, but that lacking visual quality not only hampers immersion, but takes away from much of the scares and suspense the game throws your way. Each chapter is introduced and ends just like the television show, with the host of the show explaining why you're in the situation you find yourself in, and helped remind me that I was, in fact, in the Twilight Zone. The first episode is called Character Building, and while you can play these in any order, I recommend playing them in the order suggested, as they do somewhat tie into each other. Regardless, the first is the most horrific, in that you play as a not very nice boss at a game dev company who gets his comeuppance when a digital creation comes to life and stalks you throughout the office. Arguably the most interesting aspect of this game occurs here, as you need to record the audio for that digital killer who will tauntingly call out your name and say things like, "You can hide, but I'll find you," or "You deserve this." When the game first asked me to record these lines, without any context, I had recorded them in a very monotone fashion, so when the killer started to address me, it sounded anything but scary, and I restarted the game and re-recorded my lines in a much more dramatic, entertaining, and creepy fashion. "Where are you hiding? You can hide, but I'll find you. Where are you hiding? You can hide, but I'll find you." With that out of the way, this stage is a poor man's stealth game, with you having to avoid the killer while trying to escape the building, hiding under desks or in closets, or whatever else keeps you out of sight. Unfortunately, the killer seems to be either hilariously blind at times, as it walked right past me in plain view, or annoyingly alert, seeing me through the environment and upon sight, ran up and killed me, forcing a restart at the last checkpoint to try again. You'll be tasked with finding items to get you into the next room, and ever closer to escape, though outside of that and the stealth, you aren't doing much else. Regardless, I didn't hate this chapter despite its shortcomings, and I found more to like than hate, so I'll give character building a 6 out of 10. It's alright. The next mystery is titled Terra Firma, and has you in the shoes, or hazmat boots, of a survivor of an apocalypse that turned the sun's rays up to 11 and scorched the earth. You are forced to leave the safety of your bunker in search of your daughter Hope, who is now wandering the wasteland. Shooting creatures is the core of the story, as you are armed with some sort of BB gun that has infinite ammo and fires 3 separate rounds before needing to be pumped with your offhand to reload. As you explore the landscape, newspapers scattered around hint at the events leading up to the world's end, though don't read anything but the headlines, as the body of text seems to be AI-generated nonsense. I loves me a post-apocalyptic world, but what's on display here just plain sucks and isn't fun to look at. The landscape has been buried in sand, making much of the game look drab and dull, but that's not my issue. My issue is that quite literally every element of the environment looks uninspired and boring. Textures on buildings are embarrassingly low resolution, to a point where I just assumed I was playing through an environment made up entirely of cheap Unity assets. Not the end of the world, but the combat is just as uninspired, with dark black creatures of various sizes popping out of the sand and attacking you, but they make enough noise to telegraph they are coming from a mile away, -1 creature, giving me plenty of time to find a safe spot and easily pick them off. 1 or 2 quick shots will have them effectively disappear, turning every encounter into the same one, minus a boss battle where I had to strafe right and left to avoid projectiles. I also found the mystery here to be largely predictable and rolled my eyes at the conclusion, making this the least enjoyable out of the 3 stories. 3.5 out of 10. Blah. Lastly is Deadline Earth, which places you in the role of a science fiction writer abducted by aliens. It starts off simple enough, with you in your house, going about your day by watching some cartoons on TV, having a burger, and doing some other random stuff before those dastardly aliens show up and take you aboard their ship. Living in a simulated version of your house, you go about your daily life unable to escape its confines for over a year. You only play through a few days in that time, until finally notes show up directing you on how to escape. What ensues is a trip through the alien ship where you'll see other humans in singular rooms going about their lives until you peel back the veil to reveal the truth behind your surroundings. You'll travel through areas of the ship and on floating islands containing houses and chunks of land seemingly taken by your abductors. Oh, you also get a pistol to shoot at these one-eyed, octopus-looking alien creeps that like to fry your brain if they see you. The gunplay here is arguably even worse than in the previous chapter, with your 9mm having infinite ammo thanks to ever-spawning clips at your waist, with aliens not reacting to your shots save for when they die. I didn't hate this chapter despite the mundane gameplay, but the visuals really hold it back, causing some of the more epic moments to fall flat thanks to ugly JPEG backgrounds, scaling issues on houses that made them look too small, or me too big, and an ending that tied it all together but felt cheap. 5 out of 10. Meh. I did appreciate the voice work here, as the host of the show did an excellent job at capturing the feel of the series, despite the lacking overall narrative, and the performances, outside of my own, were well done. Sound effects are on point, as they helped up the immersion factor that the visuals hurt, and there is some decent 3D audio at play that aided when I was being stalked by those creatures. PSVR 2 haptics are in use here, with my headset rumbling as I took a hit, and controllers giving a little shake when I grabbed an item or fired a gun, and while they do rumble when firing weapons, the only time I noticed adaptive feedback was when I was selecting menu options, so that's kinda weird, right? I also noticed reprojection while using thumbsticks to turn, though I didn't find it too distracting. I don't hate this game, and appreciate what the developers were going for, and even somewhat enjoyed the overall story, despite the missteps made in each chapter. But as a whole, a bulk of this game is forgettable, with the visuals and gameplay really hampering immersion. There are items you can find throughout each story that unlock additional visual filters to replay the game, like in 1950s black and white mode, and a host of others, but that wasn't enough reason to dive back and spend any more time in here than I have to. Fans of this series and this style of storytelling may be more forgiving of this than I, though if you are still interested, I'd wait for a sale, as what's here isn't anything special. I'm going to give the Twilight Zone VR a 5 out of 10. There are some fun ideas in here, but the overall game is lacking. If you enjoyed this review, please do all the YouTube things to help us out. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching.